Global warming is a major ecological concern for organisms everywhere, including humans. When you think about global warming, aquatic life may not be the first thing that comes to your mind. However, these organisms are extremely sensitive to warming temperatures. Even invertebrates and micro and macro algae are struggling. The Staghorn coral, or Acropora cervicornis, as seen above, is a well-studied reef-building coral that's native to the Florida Keys and the Caribbean. Reef-building corals are foundation species that provide habitats for other smaller organisms, so they're really important for ecosystems. Things like fish, algae, eels, and even crustaceans live in coral reefs. When a foundation species like a coral begins to struggle, it impacts the entire ecosystem and their food web. The staghorn coral used to be very plentiful in coral reefs up until about the 1980s when they began to experience wide-scale death, and now they're considered a critically endangered species. Part of this can be attributed to global warming because they only have a 2.57 degrees Celsius range in heat tolerance. The hottest atmospheric temperature where they can live is about 37 degrees Celsius. Back when the staghorn coral dominated coral reefs, atmospheric temperatures were 1 to 2 degrees Celsius cooler than they are today. That's about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The year 2024 was the hottest to date, and they're reaching the upper limit of their heat tolerance. As you can see, there's not even a full degree centigrade of wiggle room left. Heat stress can have really bad negative impacts on coral health. When they get stressed, they tend to bleach themselves, which as you can see, they lose all of their color. Coral bleaching is when corals expel the algae that live within their skeleton, but this relationship between the coral and algae is mutually beneficial, so both of them have disruptions. Bleached corals have weakened immune systems, making them extremely susceptible to disease, and they become more fragile, so they break easily. Bleaching is one of the main causes behind live tissue loss. Algae are also very important primary producers, and they remove excess nitrogen and phosphorus from the water. So when they're kicked out of their habitat, it causes a butterfly effect through the entire ecosystem. As previously mentioned, bleached corals have weakened immune systems. White band disease is especially common in the staghorn coral. This disease kills segments of live tissue, leaving white bands like this along the coral, and it spreads quite easily. Not only can this grow and spread in an individual, it spreads between individuals and affects entire colonies. While corals can recover from this disease, most organisms that are effective end up dying, which leads to colony collapse. And bleached corals are 3 times more likely to contract white band disease than a non-bleached coral. This is just one example where we can see global warming and heat stress directly linked to coral death. Luckily, the staghorn coral is the focus of many conservation and restoration efforts. They're being propagated in farms and outplanted into wild reefs to help rebuild the populations. They're being raised in nurseries, and they're even being bred for heat-tolerant and disease-resistant genes. The coral has also been included in many marine protected areas, which lets them grow without human interference. The effort being put into the conservation and restoration of this species indicates a very bright future for the staghorn coral.